I now call to order the public hearing on January 22nd, 2024. The time is 6:49 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Shora?
Here.
Member McLeaster?
Here.
Member Owens?
Here.
Member Wyrick?
Here.
Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Orr?
Here.
7 present.
Okay. At this time, we will begin the public comment portion of our agenda. Our first and only topic is ordinance 84-2020. Ben, would you please read the title?
An ordinance amending the zoning map of the City of North Canton to reclassify 48 parcels in the City of North Canton in accordance with the amendment procedure set forth in Chapter 1182 of the Planning and Zoning Code in order to ensure that current zoning more accurately reflects current uses, together with providing opportunities for future residents and businesses.
Okay. At this time, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of ordinance 84-2023? Seeing none. At this time, is anyone wishing to speak in opposition of ordinance 84-2023? Final call. Okay. This will appear on tonight's agenda. We'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned. I'll call to order the committee of the whole meeting of January 22nd, 2024. The time is 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Orr?
Here.
Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Wyrick?
Here.
Member Owen?
Here.
Member McLeister?
Here.
Member Shroya?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
7 present.
So I had a thought tonight, or maybe trying to change up things a little bit on how we present at our committee of the whole meetings. And this happened in a good way. Melissa had reached out to me today, and this is why it's so good to have different people and different perspectives. And kind of you had seen looking at this year, and you had talked with Patrick about the way that we present, I guess, at these committee of the whole meetings. And a lot of times we will, Matt will say, Stephanie, can you present on the finance committee? And then I may give a brief description, but then I typically will say, Gina, do you have anything to add? And she may, or typically it's Gina, Patrick, and Ben that 90% the ordinances are coming from, or initiated from. So we thought it might be easier, or Melissa and Patrick thought, that it might make sense to have more of a presentation format. And sometimes we do that, but to have them really start off with that ordinance. So the first one says, for instance, in mine, it was presented, submitted by finance. So Gina would present that. And I think that gives us a better opportunity to ask questions. We will still say, I move to put it to the agenda. That's still our role and responsibility. And it's our responsibility to still read the legislation or the issues and then ask questions accordingly. But they are the experts. They submitted it. They know more about it. And then we won't be repeating either what Ben says or what they say. Also, did I sum it up pretty well?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to pass it on to Patrick. And if you think I summed it up all right, but we thought this might just make it easier transition.
Yeah. Well, I think, thank you for that. I certainly welcome the opportunity to assist council in being a little bit more straightforward with the conversations. So there's not a lot of repetitiveness. I get that. But if I may digress on this subject just a bit, I would like council to think about this in the weeks ahead then. So to me, I have been evaluating a lot of changes that have occurred on city council since I've been on city council. And one of those changes involves the whole committee structure. Okay? So we would now have all 7 of you on every single committee. And I just don't see the value that brings. And that's okay in the sense that we're progressing to kind of a more informative and more efficient business model. We want that. But, to me, it would make more sense if we handled committee business. And I've got a couple of reasons here why I think it would make sense to you. And again, I'm not expecting any answers on this tonight. I'm just hoping this something in the weeks ahead here. But if committee business, the whole concept of talking about things before it becomes legislation, that's in essence what a committee does. If that was done under new business, every regular meeting that we have, there's a section at the end that's new business. I've never seen anything come up. It's very seldom happens. Can't remember the last time. But if that was taken at that time, then we would be able to still have committee in the sense that legislation is being talked about before it becomes legislation. And then what would follow after that? Well, if we were able to establish, and this is another thing that I'm looking for, is that council would meet on a predetermined, known basis what meeting nights we're having all the time. It's easier for administration to move the process of legislation through the structure. We did this with ZBOA and Planning Commission. We got away from, well, we'll just have a meeting whenever we have a meeting. Folks that serve on those committees, same with PMRB and these others, need to know in their lives what nights they're going to meet, right? Do their thing. So we said, you know, the first Wednesday of the month, period. That's it for planning. The fourth Tuesday of the month for ZBA. We know that. That's locked in. Don't book something for those nights. So if we were to say that, you know, council was going to meet on the first and third Monday, or second and fourth Monday, whatever it is that you all meet, then we would have, in essence, then a meeting, prayer, pledge of allegiance, go through all the old business, give the readings, get the new business. That's the committee. Talk about all the new things. Now, if you followed that, did that, I would say the first Monday of the month, then we should back up. Because of the council changes with public speaks, plus. So, unlike tonight, individuals would be able to speak to city council at the end of the meeting, as they do now. And it would be on stuff that they could have just heard moments before in the committee meeting, as opposed to tonight, there is no public speech. So this would allow them to speak at, you know, they could choose to speak at the beginning of the meeting. All this stuff would be published on an agenda that they would put out the Friday before, so you would all know what was coming under the new business. You would know what it is. And if Sue Platt wanted to talk about X under new business, then she knows when she's going to speak about it. And it would be fresh. It would be input received before it became legislation, kind of idea. Now, let's just say that that occurs and we have that speak and everything. Then 2 weeks later, on the third Monday, if that's what you chose, then we'd have a meeting where the stuff that was discussed in committee the previous, under new business, would now be up for its first reading. The community would have 2 weeks to learn about what's happening, not just, you know, 1 week to learn about it. So, and it would give you all 2 weeks to think about it before we came back, because sometimes questions don't come to you, you know, 6 days later at the next meeting. So I think it's front loaded a little bit more. So I think with, you know, people will be given more time to ponder it, that they will be able to speak on every matter that comes before city council. We wouldn't have this nuance about committee and you can't talk then. And this would not take any more time to move it through the process. Really, first and third, or second and fourth, and the next month, second and fourth. We still have 3 readings. It's still 2 weeks apart. Yes, there are some months in which there's 5 weeks in the month. And so, you know, that might help it out a little bit longer. But if I know when the schedule is, I know when to put it on and what the timeline is to get it through city council if council so chooses to get through it. If you did this every month, which, you know, is what you would need to determine, but that's 24 meetings out of the year. It would still allow for, if you look at the calendar, you know, the 4th Monday in June, that's what you went with, and you put the second week in July. It's almost 3 weeks in between because there's 5 weeks in one of those months. Still allows for, you know, time away with your family, that kind of thing. I get that. And then it would also save on cost, right? So right now, at every meeting, we have a transcriptionist that has to come out every time. And we have to have safety services here at every meeting. If the meetings were twice a month, then we would be able to cut back on some of those costs that we expected. And I think it would make us more efficient. It would provide for more input. And we could adopt this structure of, you know, initiation, we call it, of the legislation. So I'd like you to think about that as we move forward. But as it relates to then getting back to the agenda tonight, if that's where I'm at.
That's where you are.
Ben and I will share duties on presenting items. And you're correct, Stephanie, that, you know, between finance and administration, you know, 100% of what you're looking at is coming from that.
And then, Patrick, if something came up, a grant, or there was some change in zoning or something, would that allow on if we went that may be possible on schedule or even on committee nights, another person to present or kind of determine like as needed.
Yeah, we'll share with you what you and I talked about privately. I mean, I'm trying to make sure that I'm able to help balance for our dedicated employees, some type of work-life balance structure. And I know I've talked with Catherine here this week, and she's going to start attending every regular meeting, City Council.
And it might be just once a year. I don't know.
No, we have the deputy director here, but then as far as I've said if there's a new project or a new grant or something like that where there could be a lot of detailed questions that I may or may not know every answer, but the person who would be the person who got the grant. And if that's Rob Graham, then certainly for that meeting, we could have Rob Graham there to present it, answer all the questions. But then I would not expect him to come back for the process of moving it through. Now, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be questions the next week, and to the extent that I can answer them, I will. But the answer could be, I'll have to get back with them if that's a good question. Did that answer your question?
Yep.
So as far as this goes, are we still like reading the ordinance before we talk about it, kind of thing?
That's the other meeting type. We only read the title on council nights, not committee.
Oh, okay.
So we would, I could still introduce and say it's Committee on Economic Development. Patrick or Ben, whoever wants to present, whoever.
I'll let Ben go if you want to do this, because he works a lot with building.
Ordinance 84 is what we just had our riveting public hearing on. It's basically another round of zoning cleanup. So Matt and Stephanie, I think, were the only ones on last time we did a round of zoning cleanup where we just sort of went through the whole city and tried to get rid of any random spot zonings that didn't really fit in with the rest of the neighborhoods. After we did that cleanup, we did the Main Street zoning, and that sort of unfortunately made a couple more spots that need cleaned up. So of these 48 parcels, the largest is the Shearbrook condominium complex. The new zoning proposed for them, they are still fully compliant. They can still continue to improve their facilities. What it's really about is right now the zoning they're in is general business B, which is our most permissive. So if somebody in the future were ever to buy out that whole condominium complex, they could build a car repair or a hospital or something right next to the residential neighbors next door. So the new proposed zoning would just prevent those sorts of uses that people generally don't like in their backyard. But the condos would still be a permitted use. Other than that, all of the other cleanups are commercial zoning to commercial zoning.
Do you have the map we can go up with the 48 parcels?
It would be several maps, but yes. So this first one is the Shearbrook condominium complex that I was just talking about, which they're being zoned Main Street North. They're what we would generally consider medium density housing, which is permitted in that district. This is at the corner of Fair Oaks and 7th. It's for some reason just two properties that are zoned GBA. And we're just making the match at MS North, which is right in front of them on Main Street. Between Mississippi and Rose Lane, there was a sort of slice of general business B still snuck in there for some reason. It's actually, that zoning for some reason doesn't line up to parcel boundaries. So it's actually parts of a couple different parcels are half zoned GBB, half zoned whatever else they are. This just fixes those up. And then on this map, we have, this is sort of a a large swampy parcel, and we're just moving the border between residential and business to use the creek as our border between residential and business. It's sort of a nice natural border that occurs there. And then right here, these two really tiny ones, this one on the south side of Hallam is a property owned by Wagoners, and it is, as you can see in the underline, currently half zoned business and half zoned residential, so we'll just zone it all business. And then this little one up on the top is actually a row of trees, which exists as a buffer between the businesses and the gentleman's house next door. He owns the row of trees. Let's zone his row of trees to match his house. That's all.
Makes sense. And this was returned to us from the building committee.
Correct.
Any questions, comments?
Nice job presenting.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
I'll
I'm gonna
take 3B.
What's that?
I'll take 3B.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to put this on the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Patrick?
Okay, so this change in the zoning map concerns 10 parcels that are on Portage Street behind the new school in Charlotte. Okay, so as you know, the school has acquired some additional parcels and some additional homes there, individuals that reached agreements to buy some property. And the school needs to work on some additional parking spaces for their staff. This is turning into a really good program. We're looking at, with this new parking that would be on the intersection of around Hillcrest and Portage. So there's a couple homes there that they've acquired that we would put some additional they would put some additional parking spaces in there, pretty fair number of them. And then there would be entrance or exit off of Portage, depending on how they reconfigure the drop-off pickup line. So this gives them options to improve upon what we currently have, which is the entrance to the drop-off is on Hillcrest. And then they exit onto Sharp. So this could give us a way, potentially, to queue people up or let people out on Portage. Now, you know, we got the roundabout. So we kind of suspended construction on that during the winter here, unless there's, you know, a decent break in the weather. That should be finished in the spring, but theoretically, if people were, you know, let out on the Portage side, they could do a right turn heading west. And then right now, you know, there's that apartment building where the street is one way
Yeah.
and the other is yellow striped off. Well, we would open that back up to two-way traffic. So basically, you could exit off of Portage, off of the parking lot, turn right heading west, and get into the roundabout to go about your business, whether that's whatever direction you wanted to go. And that would certainly help then the situation on Charlotte with everybody trying to get out at one spot in the street. So that's part of that, what you see at the bottom of your screen, bottom of that green triangle on the parking lot you can see there. That's another parking lot on the top. This would be in the far left corner of your screen. You see the giant parking lot out there, Charlotte and Hillcrest, and then south of that. I used to have a pointer.
Ooh. Need that.
Huh?
That's good.
Isn't this good? Yeah. This here.
Extend, you can sit down and do it.
So you could come out here, you could possibly turn here and go this way, catch the roundabout, either go further on Portage or up to Hillcrest or go to Charlotte. As opposed to the way it is configured now, This gives us some optionality that we're looking for. And, basin here on the corner. So, and then, as you know, you probably are aware that the library, the North Kent Public Library and the school kind of got an arrangement worked out where they're going to swap some parcelage, and these shows 3 homes here, but there's only one left. The other ones have been all demoed, and the last occupant is moving of the one home that's there, and that will be taken down. And then what they wanted to do is build this parking lot up here. This is behind City Hall. This is green, orange, and allow for parking for patrons of the North Kent Library or employee staff of the library. But right now, there's just insufficient parking because this project took away the parking that existed before. This is where the buses park to drop off and pick up. So then this area down here, which right now, you know, this is all grass, this was going to be playground or athletic surfaces for these children to play on. That will now move down here. And so we will likely see, you know, we're going to make a pitch for some very decorative faux wrought iron look fence maybe along here and class it all up. Our zoning prohibits chain link, but around here, so that if children are playing here, that they can't, you know, escape. And, you know, if there's a ball or something that's kicked, that it won't roll out into the street kind of thing. So that's the idea with what we're talking about now, is to rezone these parcels here so that it fits what we have over here, and this is part of the institution. It is
Main Street Center.
and what do we want to do with this? Main Street Center? Yeah, we want to make this, it used to be P&I, and we made it Main Street Center. So we want to tie it all together the same type of zoning. It does not affect these homes that are here. Residents live here, and this has nothing to do with those folks. Okay. That's in essence what you're having for.
Thank you. And this won't affect I think there's anywhere from 2 to 4 parcels that haven't been touched. And those aren't part of the zoning change on this. So,
I did have a question, and I realize, this isn't like a development review session here,
Just to
but
send it over.
just to send it over, but I was contacted by a resident who did have some concerns about lighting, because the parking lots are gonna be closer to the homes on Portage. Is there any reason to be concerned about that? I mean, again, I know that this is not, we don't even see light poles listed here. I'm presuming that's gonna go through the regular review process. There'll be light studies, and we should be able to assure these residents that there won't be light trespass. Is that a fair statement?
Well, to answer the first question, is there anything to be concerned about? There's always something to be concerned about if you don't have the right people here administrating. But whoever that's going to be in the future, you always have to make sure that the processes that we've established continue. And one of those is that we get together on every development prior to, while it's still in the discussion phases, with our personnel, be it building, from a zoning standpoint, in this case, the lighting, fire department, police department. We've already had a convergence of all the department heads with the school officials, library officials, their consultants, their architects, to talk about this. And so lighting is that, and Mr. Van Gundy, our building department superintendent, has assured me that he's reviewed those plans and they all have the type of shields on them that keep the light onto the property, that it won't escape and bother. That was brought up, and we addressed that with the school and their architects, and they're very.
Perfect, thank you.
Do you know what? I had a woman that had contacted me too, and it was in another area of the city, and the school lighting, it was after the fact. So even though went through all the plans and thought everything was gonna be okay. She still had a lot of additional light. And Mr. Van Gundy went out on his time during the evening and checked, and it was definitely coming into her space. And he worked incredibly well with the school, and a solution was reached, and maybe more shields needed to be put on, or some different tree, and it was funny because it was something no one ever would have thought of. It was actually inside the building, and it was a stool or something that the light went on inside the staircase. Like you never would have thought ever that it would reach this, area. And the timing was also changed. And so that was a compromise as well that happened after. So it seems like both entities are really willing to compromise. Like no one wants to have light pollution in that case.
Right.
So.
Well, since we're on the subject of lighting, I'll just throw out the Ward 3 Council that some correspondence came in to the mayor that was forwarded to me to address at the Claremont School. We have on the east side of that building is an exit lane for buses, get back out onto Maple. And there's that traffic light signal that's there on Maple flashes yellow all the time.
Yeah.
So that, the traffic does not stop. The only time it gets triggered is when there are buses to get out. And when that's triggered, then those lights turn, red, and then there's a red light that's facing the school that turns green to allow the buses. So the question was posed, since school is over at whatever time, could we reach some sort of an accord where the city could have that red light that's saying, don't leave the school parking lot? That would be unreasonable at 9 or 10 o'clock, that light's just shut off because it shines into the couple homes that are on the east side of the street, and then maybe reactivate it at 6 in the morning. And so we're working with a company that we use to program those kinds of things to see if we can get that. That's going to let you know that and get a chance to call them.
Is it easy programmable? Are lights becoming more and more sophisticated? Okay.
Never.
Okay.
If you think it would.
You would think it would.
You'd think it would. We had at Orion and Maine on the PNC side, east side of the street, the crosswalk button that you push that makes it audible when you push it so that those that can't hear, like me, can hear something to know that it is working when you push the button. Well, apparently that sound ceased. And so we sent out the people to take a look at that, and there was some type of electrical short. And in essence, they had to dismantle the entire apparatus in one of those big silver boxes that sit at the intersection that control everything, and take it back to the shop and try to troubleshoot what was going wrong. And we're still working. It's not simple.
Are those warranty claims? Claims we pay.
Well, because they're been there so long. But, and if I could just digress one more time, you're not going to like this new topic.
You have to stay on topic like everybody else.
That's, yeah.
That's the rule.
You brought up life. This was zoning, so you broke the rule. But usually if you get me going, I'll probably forget what I was talking about.
Did I do it?
It just happened. Oh, now I remember. So at 10th and Main, or comes out, the school buses come out of the school and get on the main. I asked our people to see if they could talk to the technology folks to do the programming. Could you do this? I was up there and I counted, when the school lets out, there's 20 some buses that all come down 10th Street to Main to go their various ways with the kids. And the school bus is like 40 feet long. And queue up 20 of them at that light, 2 football fields long. That's a lot. And that light was only to allow the buses a left turn south on the main. That light was only going for 15 seconds. You can move like maybe 2 buses through that. And then, whether they get a chance to do more or not. So we were able to program just the turn to be longer. And so now we're letting out like 15, 17 buses each signal. And so that is moving that traffic a lot more without affecting the north-southbound traffic on Main. Anyway, it's probably more than you wanted to know.
Yeah, that's great.
Any other comments, questions from anybody?
My recommended motions sheet is wrong. We do need to send it to planning commission as Patrick and Jamie noted earlier.
Okay. I will make a motion to send it to the planning commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Same.
Motion carries, 6 for an abstention. Moving on to finance and property.
Okay. The first one is regarding the cell tower. Anything you'd like to talk about, Patrick?
Yeah, so, one of the themes I'm returning to is, it's been going on for, a couple of years now, is about trying to get more value out of our underutilized assets, to the city to benefit from that financially. And so, as you recall, we sold a cell tower lease arrangement that we had on our water tower out on Pleasantwood. And, that was written and done back in the day when we really didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have the right legal team to put together a really strong contract. I was on City Council at the time. City Council said they didn't want to do it. I called up Mike Molina, told him he'd be crazy to pass this up. It's a great deal. The school put the cell tower on their property. And they last year sold that lease after having had it for 15 or so years. And they did quite well on that. And that's good. So we sold ours. We didn't do quite as well as they did, but we didn't have somebody write it. Well, the people that wrote theirs wrote ours. But this new one that I'm talking about now. So Verizon reached out to us to express interest in improving the cell tower signal for North Canton residents. And so they wanted to put something where, they geographically could get it. And that meant for us, their site was somewhere around the Walsh University area and heading east out to, say, the old Middle Branch Plaza. So I suggested that, hey, if you want, I can give you the contact information for the Plain Township Administrator. You can call them and see if they want to put it out there at that plaza. But we're okay if you want to have it here. We're just trying to be open and honest. They appreciated that. So they got back with me and said, we would prefer your site. We think it gives much more coverage to North Canton residents. And that's what we're really looking for. And so this parcel is one that is next to east of the parking lot at the Little League ball field. So this was part of what was gifted to the city as the old Luzio farm. And so we've owned this for a long time. And all it has been is just another piece of property that has very little purpose, and we mow the grass all the time. So why not do something about it and maybe turn a little revenue stream back towards the city? So in the rear of that property, the northern end of that property, end of that parking lot where the trailhead comes out there, we have a little well, number 5 for our water. And they're looking to locate, towards that end, not interfering with the well, but it's on that northern end. It's way back in there. So you won't even really be able to see much of it from the street. the street sits up real high and it slopes back. This lease agreement is with Diamond Towers. They're the entity that secures these things for Verizon. It's a lease in 5-year increments, much like the one we had before. The rent is $1,500 a month to the city, with options as they get additional entities that want to be on the tower. So it's going to be principally Verizon, but if Verizon doesn't have a problem with Cricket being on there, because they don't view Cricket as that much competition, as opposed to, we don't want to put AT&T on it. That would be our competition. So there's a possibility that some other entities could be on there, and there's a provision to get additional revenue, percentage of that revenue. What we hope to do is that as they build this up and they do have other players on there, then this lease becomes a valuable asset to the city, in that we could sell them and take that revenue stream out over the 25 years or so of this agreement in 5-year renewal increments, that we'd be able to monetize that up front, just as we did in the last one. But because it's a stronger lease and there's tougher terms and conditions, binds people to things, we think that we'd get a fairer price, much like the school. So that's putting together an asset that's not producing anything to the city, to get it to produce something for the city. It's really out of the way. It's, got football field, all that on that side, Washington Square. It's really in the swamp to the north. It's really away from the residential area. So I think it's a great location. And then we're talking with them about other potential locations in the city. So we have a water tower behind St. Paul's that is not utilized, but these are things that we could use to turn around and give us some needed funding.
Thank you. You covered my question, which was going to be location and not interfering with the overflow for the baseball parking, where I find myself parking frequently.
I've been in other communities where they paint them, they make them look like trees. Are we to that point yet where?
Not on this particular one.
Okay. You've seen that?
I have seen that.
Yeah. Is that something put in a contract, or you try, or? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends, where it's being placed.
Yeah.
Typically you find that you want something like that if you're approaching or infringing upon more than residential.
Right. Right.
This particular location is so well far away and hidden
It is.
in a lower lying area.
Okay, I just didn't know what this thing was. Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right, then move to put this on the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And the next one, I will let our finance director talk about the different appropriations that we've had. I think that's the part one. Yep. As we just discussed, it was numerous, some different contract negotiations and just things that occurred. So,
Okay. Well, yeah, so when we passed the original budget in October, these are all the things that have changed the outlook for 24. So either monies have come in, or some quotes have come in less than what we need to spend, or things such as the union negotiations have been settled, and so we have some additional expense we may have. So I provided you a list, and I want to run through the revenues, because the revenues are certified to the Stark County auditor. And then when they certify those additional revenues, council is then allowed to appropriate the money. So we do have a few additional revenues. One program in the general fund that we're expected to bring in around 110,000, and it's all overtime, is extra jobs. So the police provide security and also at football games for Walsh, and for the high school, there's EMS staff that are asked and required to be there. And so the city has not billed that in the past. The individuals were working on this for side jobs, basically. So we have brought those back in to be under the union contracts, and they'll be paid through payroll, which then is going to bill whatever the agency is that's requesting their service. So we're estimating that to be 110,000 between all the agencies for the whole year. It's the first year we're doing that this way, so if that number changes through the year, then I'll bring it back to you. So that one's an offset. There's a revenue and an expense for the same amount. Also in the general fund, there's a drug use prevention grant, which is like the old DARE grant. And so that's money that we'll be receiving 3 of the 4 quarters worth. It's about $11,500, and we use that to offset our DARE executive officer in this year. In the fire fund, they received a 75% grant from the BWC, it's a safety intervention grant. So 75% of that was $39,300, and on the offsetting side of expense, we have the $52,400 for them to purchase what they applied for with that BWC grant. In the Parks Development Fund, we received $4,500 in donations to purchase park benches, so we need to allocate that money through appropriations so we can purchase the park benches. And then we also received $27,875. That was a reimbursement for the Performing Arts Pavilion of the Dogwood Parks project that we are still working on. So that was just one more piece of that project. And then on the expense side, we do have some, well, I'm not going to touch that one. We'll get to that one when we get to the pay ordinance. So the police and dispatch departments are going through a transition of technology from CMI to Tyler Technologies, Clark County. Chief could probably talk more about that. Canton, who are the 4 agencies that are in the middle of switching to Tyler?
Well, we started with the process, which is because of the poor performance of their software system, we are switching.
We're going back to CMI, but there are 4, my point is there's 4 agencies that are also having the same trouble, correct?
It's Stark County, Jackson Township, Maslin.
So we're kind of all in this boat that we're in a temporary holding pattern with moving forward with Tyler. In other words, we still need to recommission our server and boot back up CMI so that they can continue doing what they need to do. So there's some expense to that. We recognize that, but they are working on the Tyler and see what happens with that contract if we move forward. We added an administrative assistant in the fire department. That's part of the transition plan to move to a full-time department. So that person is working on scheduling and staffing and payroll and all of the administrative assistant duties that they need help with out there. We are also hiring a seasonal part-time person, less than 20 hours a week, to help us with this lead copper project, identification project of our water lines. We just need somebody to do pollen tape, the inventory, take the pictures, help people take the pictures, help people email the pictures. Just somebody that is on the phone responding to all of the people who need help, and to also be maybe even reaching out proactively and not waiting for people to call and say, hey, I need help. So hiring somebody seasonally to help us with that. The Alberta Beach Water Line Project. Sorry?
Beach.
Beach.
You said beach.
I did. Sorry.
Beach sounds better.
The water line project, our engineer, city engineer Rob Graham would like to start on the design for that. It's a 2025 project, but it has to be designed before, obviously. So he's gonna work on that, because we do have a appropriation in there to address that. And then there are 3 increases to the water department that we budgeted last year, and when we finalized the appropriations last year, these were 3 big major projects that we weren't able to complete or even start. And so those 3 things we reduced out of last year's budget, and we would like to move them to this year's budget. So they're technically additional this year, but they weren't done, and it's not like we're spending the money twice. And those things are the source water testing for the new Arrowhead well, which clearly is not completed yet, so we couldn't test the water. The water tower inspections and cleaning, that company just could not get out here. They said they'd be out here in the spring, so they didn't get out here in the fall. And then the clarifier repainting, same thing. They didn't get here last year, and so we rescheduled them from this year. So we just moved that money from last year into this year's budget. And then the employee insurances, in October, we don't know what our plans will cost because it's just in the beginning phases of renewal. So we get those back from the underwriters usually right before open enrollment period, which is the month of December. So we do our budget based on current year, what we knew at that time last year in October. And then through open enrollment, employees select their plans, they change coverages, plan rates increase or decrease, all these other things. And so we just need to adjust our budget so that we can match what our plan is going to cost. I think that touches on all of the other things.
That's great. Any other questions? Okay, I will move back to the agenda.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and now on C, gonna take this one?
Mhm.
Standard procedure.
Standard procedure. We're doing this for 100 years.
Yep.
So the incidents under Ohio Revised Code that say that, hey, if you have someone who's indigent in your community, and they need legal counsel, that is handled through a contract with the Stark County Public Defender's Office, and we're required to, enter into an agreement with them where they're going to do that in the event that that occurs. I recognize that our community is not one usually associated with indigency, but it does happen from time to time. So we just need to renew this contract. We do it, on an annual basis. We do work on this months before it expires, but we never get it back from the Public Defender's Office before the contract expires. That's just the way it works.
Good collaboration. Any questions? Again, standard procedure. If none, I'll move to adopt. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and lastly, word D. About our personnel. Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, you wanted to wait on this one.
Yes, this is the one I was started to refer to, but wanted to wait. So these are part-time pay rates. Our entire exempt ordinance of positions increases annually with cost of living. Whatever the federal government Social Security says cost of living is, the city follows that. So these are all the part-time positions that are not increasing by cost of living, rather they are increasing, they're tied to the union contract. So part-time dispatchers, part-time police, those are the positions that you're seeing here, EMS, fire.
Any concern? All right, a motion to add to the council agenda.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Moving on to ordinance and rules.
Well, again, this is probably standard procedure on that. Ben, you want to?
Yeah, so we borrow from the Ohio Revised Code a not insignificant amount of our criminal code, simply because it, keeps it consistent with what's illegal broadly in the state of Ohio, and there's some formalities with the court system that makes it easier. Sometimes we cite under our code instead of state code. So once a year, we have to go through and look at all of the pieces of state code we borrow, see what changed, and make updates. Normally, we do this once every year. Keen-eyed viewers will note it's been 2 years because it used to be on a every August cycle. So I held it over a year in 22 to get onto a every January cycle because a lot of state laws will trigger on January 1. So it's just easier to do it after each January 1 instead of in the middle of the year. But yeah, other routine.
Yeah. Any questions? Well, I'll make a motion to put it to the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on. 6B.
That's it.
For 6A.
Or 6A, sorry. Personnel and safety.
Go ahead. Yes. Under the format that we're doing now.
Tag team, and I'm sure I won't cover everything. But this is in regards to establishing rates for when our police and or fire EMS personnel are asked to perform services which we call special duty outside the normal construct of their employment with us. So in the past, there's a couple items that Gina and I have been found that we don't like how it's been run in the past. One is concerning liability in conversations with our legal counsel. If say a police officer was going to provide special duty service to a business that was having a grand opening and they were concerned about all the traffic and they wanted officers there to direct traffic and all that kind of stuff. And it was going to be, take either people off of the roads or it was going to be after hours or whatever it was going to be. That this was done without there being a contract signed between the city and the entity that was requiring the service. And so we felt that, look, if something happened and the police officer had to respond as a police officer to an incident that was occurring, liability-wise, we're going to be on the hook for that. So there really should be a contract then between the entity and the city saying these are the terms and conditions of getting this. It's not that complicated, one-page probably contract. And then the city will invoice the cost of the police, fire, or EMS services. And then as those funds are received, of course, then the officers, have it reflected in their paycheck that they work X hours special duty, overtime or not. And so they get, eventually get paid. And it runs through their PER or their Ohio Police and Fire pension or whatever one that it is that they contribute to. So that was one issue that we wanted to resolve. And then the second one was on the cost. So, look, I've been on this mantra now for a year. I know I take a lot of heat for it, but hey, this is the way it is. We have to look for ways to truly, share with the community what it costs to run this place. Okay. So there were a lot of special duties or to Main Street Festival or to whatever it was that services were being asked for. And they weren't paying really the going rate for those services. Well, if you're going, if where we're at today is we're trying to get the most bang for our buck, we have to establish with the help of finance what are these costs. So when a police officer is contracted or fire EMS is contracted, how much does it cost to put them there? And it's not just their wage, their pension obligation, it's all the things that go into whether just as if that person was at the city working there. All their benefit costs, and so Gina's department in the lead helped us figure out what those rates are so that we can put them into the contract that somebody signs with us. So we made this effective. We're looking to make it effective February 1st with that. So any new engagements that come in beginning February 1st, say this is the going rate. This is what you have to pay if you want this service.
I have a question. If a police officer or fireman have worked 40 hours for the week and then they get a special assignment, we have to pay them time and a half, or is this considered something else?
This is
Yes, and their contract is actually anything over 8 hours in one day they receive overtime. So anything will be beyond their regular 40-hour schedule, no matter what day it is, would be overtime.
Then how do they, how do they bid out these jobs? Do you look for guys that are under the 40 hours, or is it first come, first serve?
We follow the union contract, so it's based on seniority.
Okay, thanks.
But we do have, like in the police department, we have, two different unions that could potentially have to respond. You've got patrol officers, patrol is a contract, and that's through OBPA, and then you have sergeants and lieutenants that are through the FOP, and the chief has worked out in accord between the two unions on how we are going to respond to this so that we can provide with some level of predictability who is going to show up and what their costs are going to be in advance.
Right.
So that the organization can plan accordingly.
Would this be something that they could maybe farm out to a private agency? How would our rates compare to a private agency on that?
Well, certainly that could be done. And I can tell you that, there is, a massive shortage of real law enforcement personnel. The sheriff's office is constantly, looking for places. All the other communities are, and, yes, could you say maybe, and I don't know this to be the case, I doubt that it is, but say you go to the city of Massa and they have, are they going to send somebody over to do your church parking lot on a Sunday? They're probably doing that in their own community.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is that yes, it can be done, but the practicality of it is that all of our law enforcement agencies everywhere are being stretched, to the max, so to cover everything.
Thanks.
I do like that there's a charge in there for the police vehicle or the fire EMS vehicle that needs to be there. But if there are 3 police officers needed, one of them's a supervisor, so that takes care of authority and leadership, and that the EMS is 2 members are there, so that fills out the unit. I think it was well thought out and put together.
Thank you for bringing those additional points.
Any other questions? I'll make the motion that we move this to the council agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. B.
6B. Okay. So this is accepting the architecture, APMT, as the architecture for the Canton, North Canton Fire and EMS Station. So I'd like to turn it over to Patrick. I know you have a lot to add to this. I've got some things I'd like to interject.
Okay, well, I'm gonna probably just queue up Ben on this, but in doing so, I would say that, I sat on the last committee that got this process going and getting an architect firm selected. We hadn't reached it at this stage yet, but I'm glad to see that we have now finally. And I felt that it would be more appropriate for 2 reasons, me not to sit on this committee. One, just that I thought that probably a number of the respondents would be the same respondents as before, and I didn't want to go into it with any kind of predisposed bias in favor or against anyone. And second, I thought that it was important that we start the process of bringing up the people who will follow me into this role of, of helping to run the city. So it was an opportunity to delegate a very important responsibility and test his skills, Ben Young, to run this project. And I've been most impressed with the job that he has done. This has worked out very well. We've had dozens of architects apply from across the country. Ben led the effort with a committee that consisted of city council, consisted of finance, consisted of administration, the mayor, not me, and they all looked at proposals for several weeks that were submitted, had a screening process through that, narrowed the list down to a group and ranked them into who is it that we want to interview. And so narrowed the list down to about 7 or 8 and ranked them the top 3 that they wanted to bring in for interviews and presentations. And that was also done before that committee. I sat on that committee just to make sure that this thing was going the direction that it should be going, and it was. And that committee voted and established under the rules that we were following, that the Ohio Revised Code has established for us, the Ohio Administrative Code as well, that if we choose an architect in this format, then once we determine who the finalists are, we kind of rank them and to go to our number 1 pick, engage in a conversation with them about the price. And if we find that price to be acceptable, then we can stop the process. Then we can select that group. If we don't find the price acceptable, we can move to the next one on the list and so on until we get either an accord or we have to start over. So then I'm going to let you go through and talk a little bit more about that, and then along with this contract.
Okay, thank you very much. Just like Patrick detailed, we have been through quite the selection process to come to our top finalists that we brought to you all here tonight. That finalist is App Architecture, APP Architecture. They are from Englewood, Ohio, which is out by Dayton. And I think what really put them over the top for us, as I described it to Dave on the phone, is that lots of the architects who applied felt like architects who would build us a fire station if we asked for it. App felt like an architect who builds fire stations. And so what really put them over the top was their interview, and particularly their team lead, Tim Beament, showed to us that he really knows what he's talking about, that this is what he does. He's been doing it for 20 or more years, designed, I think it's 25 fire stations in his career. We did, as they were our top pick, engage with them about price and what the contract terms would be. They would like to use the standard American Institute of Architects contract for architectural services with a public entity using a construction manager at risk delivery method. So what that means is, assuming you all are happy with this tonight, the next step of our process, in addition to starting design meetings with the architect, will be to perform a similar process to what we did to pick an architect, but to pick a contractor who will ultimately build this facility for us. This is the same process that the school district used with Sol Harris Day and Hammond Construction for their 2 recent schools.
Ben, could you elaborate on why we felt that, and I think you asked this to all the applicants, but why it was so important maybe to use the CMAR, the construction management risk model, as it related to the architect group?
Yeah, so when the selection committee was doing interviews, we were not quite sure which delivery method we would prefer, whether design, bid, build, or construction manager at risk. And so we asked all 3 of the finalists who interviewed with us, in their opinion, what would they recommend? And all 3 said a construction manager at risk. And that was because with the construction manager at risk process, you get the contractor involved early, and you have more control over picking who that contractor is. So if we do design, bid, build, we design the whole thing, put together a bid packet, put it out. Pretty much whoever the lowest bid is, that's who we're getting. Whether or not we love them, they have a wonderful reputation in the committee, those sorts of things. in addition to being able to pick more early and not just based on price, having a contractor involved early, all three firms talked about the contractor is able to give better estimates as we go through the design process and tip us off to things like, oh, that steel is in very short supply. Don't use that steel in your design. You'll never order it. It'll never arrive on time. Or this is a public safety facility. We're required to have a generator. And that generator pretty much has to run the entire building. Something we can do if we do a construction manager process is the construction manager can order that generator pretty much right now when the project is still in design. And generators, large pieces of equipment like that have 18 to 36 months, I believe is what they said, lead times. So getting it ordered early helps it arrive on time to finish construction faster. So overall, they talked a lot about how having them involved early in the process will actually help save us money in the long run.
Yeah.
Good.
The Chiefs and I, other notable points about app, the Chiefs and I went and visited their very recently completed fire station in Wadsworth, Ohio. It just opened last December. And it was very impressive. Lots of small things that I never would have thought of that they said the architect recommended to them. So, for example, I learned that apparently the number one way a fire truck is damaged is a firefighter driving through the garage door because it's not up all the way yet. App in their stations puts LED indicator lights next to the garage door that are red if it's down, they flash red if it's going up, and then they turn green once it's all the way up and it's safe to drive out the door. So just little things like that. And then the city of Kettering, who we called for reference for app, has used them for 5 fire stations. So that was a good indication that they're doing something right, that somebody keeps going back to them over and over. Kettering.
I think that's 5 stations.
Oh, that's amazing.
What else would you all like to know?
Do you want to run through the slides real quick? Some of the highlights from their presentation. I asked Ben if he would pull those up. So this is, of course, their cover page. Ben pretty much covered what we were going to do there. In this page here, that what we're looking at is just simply the fact that if you notice in the top left-hand corner, the City of North Canton Fire EMS Department, they're at the top of this chart. They're the ones that are running this. They're the ones that are communicating with app, who then works with the rest of the individuals. And this is just pictures of the facilities that they have built, looking at the quality of the construction. Just wanted to kind of throw a few of those out there.
In the top middle of this slide is the Wadsworth station that we visited.
So they talked in their interview, and they talked about different things. A couple of points to bring out is the hot zone decontamination management apparatus. They've built so many of these. They know how to put together the right facility to protect our employees. And I wanted to make sure that was out there and important for us to bring out.
And we currently have no dedicated decontamination facilities at either station.
And this is just kind of a picture showing how they design and lay things out for efficiency, controlling those pathogens, making sure that it's even separate from the living quarters, keeping them separate.
How do we decontaminate now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Essentially, right now, they shower in the same shower you would take your normal shower in. And then one of the stations has 2 dryers that you could wash your uniform in a separate machine than what all the carcinogen clothes are washed in. But the other station just has one washed. So your normal uniform, your day gear, and all the cancer things are washed in the same machine.
You know, does the new one at Plain, do they have a decontamination or Jackson?
Yes, they both do.
They would, like, it would look like that other picture.
Yeah, they're typically just sort of the extractor machine is what it's called, which is supposed to clean all the carcinogens out of their gear, a drying rack, maybe a small sink, and then one or two shower stalls, just so right after you come back from the fire, you get it all off of you.
Got it.
So it's not really anything fancy, but it is an
Yeah.
important step in.
I don't remember, I went on the
Preventing
tours, and I
infection.
don't remember them like talking about it or
No.
making it like a thing. That's why I asked.
It's a very post 9/11 development of studying more the
Yeah.
carcinogenic effects of responding to events like that.
Along those lines, keeping all of the equipment separate from the living quarters in the sense that those fumes and everything aren't moving into the living quarters. So one of the other things they do is they go through a design, laying things out for low maintenance, easy cleaning. Those things all take additional cost long run, just maintaining and operating things. So it's nice to know that through their design phase, they're keeping that in mind. And this just kind of shows the overview of the process. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that it's not just a one and done. There's a lot of communication that goes on, a lot of meetings that take place, a lot of interaction, and a lot of communication throughout the whole process. The other thing they do is they bring in these 3D models and they lay things out so that you can actually visually see what's going on. So it's not just a piece of paper. Seems kind of fun, but if you look at the next slide, this is what they designed here. This is their 3D model here. The following slide is the actual results of what they produced. So it is very accurate and it helps with the building process, helps the contractors.
As it was described to us, it's very helpful. Before 3D modeling, they said there was a lot of chance, particularly with overlapping engineers, to put different pipes through each other because the plumber makes their plans and then the HVAC guy makes his plans and they don't really look at each other. By forcing it into a 3D model, you can pick out early before it's too costly. Oh, those pipes are going to hit each other. Maybe we need to move one.
So their fee structure, Bennett explained to me that, on average, most of them tend to run about 8%. They're closer to 6%, and it's all based on the size and the scope, and it's broke out through the entire period and the entire process.
Yeah, so they, very similar to what a construction manager at risk would do, they have offered a maximum guaranteed price, so to speak, unless we ask them to do something beyond the scope of the contract, in which case it would cost more. But so the price in your packet that they bid at is $663,000 and change is the full price for the total 3, 4, 5 years long this project takes from design to completion.
And how will they bill that?
So they will bill monthly as pieces of the project are completed. So they've provided us with essentially a Gantt chart of all the various steps we go through, and as each step gets completed, we get billed for that step.
So the new building, it's estimated 22,500 square feet.
Yes, we had a more deep dive meeting with them and came out to about 23.5.
What's our current,
Which one?
let's say Main Street?
Main Street, the Bay Area is about 18,000 square feet, and then the administrative section is about 2,000, so 20,000-ish altogether.
Okay.
So we hit the last one. So of course, nobody's going to give you their bad reviews, but a couple of things stood out to me in this is the timely responsive. They're going to be on site every 2 weeks. The great follow through. That's the big thing with projects this size. That's the communication side of that. And Obviously, it's working. If you consider Kettering with 5 locations, Wadsworth is close by. Ben had reached out to them and talked to them. And that's the kind of leadership that we need in a project like this. It's a big ask, and we're asking the community in March a big ask. But to spend those numbers responsibly. Patrick, are we going to mention tonight the location that we've planned for this?
Yes, we are.
Good. Would you like to take that?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Should we add to the suspense? I had other questions for you.
Oh, absolutely. Let's add to the suspense.
Ben, with this process that you went through, I'm sure you noted that not any of the team's presentations included that all the folks that they were going to use were people that were employed by them. They had, maybe an engineering preferred partner, this preferred partner, or that preferred partner. And so my question to you is, with this particular company, were all of those components local?
They were all located in Ohio, which is the bar with which we measured local for these submissions, as a large number of the firms that submitted had engineering partners that were from Maryland or South Carolina or DC. So all 4 of the firms included an apps team, both architectural and engineering, are located in the state of Ohio.
Very good. And then in the contract price was all of the travel, cost, mileage inclusive in that price?
Yes, there is no additional travel mileage fee. That's all built into their flat fee, so we will not have to deal with them submitting mileage reports for reimbursement or something to that effect.
Okay, that was all the questions I had, so now I will do that. But is there any?
I have a map for you.
If you can put up with the. So this is along Main Street. Down here is Portage. We remember this as being the old Spitzer development that was here, Viking Street. And this, the CIC has acquired for these purposes 5 parcels along Main and Viking for the purposes of building a fire station here. For reference, this is the Summer Moon Spa. This is Randy's Automotive. This was a triplex. This was a duplex. This is a triplex. This is a single family home. This footprint is sufficient to build fire station. Everybody put forward an idea on, kind of the schematic layout, but they all believe that with what we're needing, it can be constructed on this footprint. That's not to say that other parcels might not become available to add to this footprint as time goes on, but they're not required to do that. All of the properties were sold through just a market process. The properties were for sale. The individual that owned Randy's Automotive owned 4 of the 5 properties, and all of the properties were sold voluntarily. There was no eminent domain action. So this property was on this one here was on the market first. It was listed by Jose Medina. Our realtor contacted Mr. Medina, inquired about a price for that. And Mr. Medina says, well, I know you guys, the city buys properties along Main Street, so I thought, this would be a good fit. And our realtor asked, well, we know that your client owned multiple properties here. Is he interested in selling any of the other properties? He indicated. Mr. Medina got back to us and said he'd entertain an offer for all the properties. So we put together an offer, had some negotiation, and he accepted our offer and sold. Randy's was a good business. He moved to a Restore Road location, give them some more space, but the city intends to build on this footprint a fire and EMS building only.
And I would add that it's only 2 blocks north of our current main station on Main Street, and only 4 blocks north of the ideal location according to GIS analysis. It's essentially as close as we could get to the mathematically perfect location.
And we should note that there are 2 independent studies done. One that the city engaged in with Fitch and Associates to determine the best location, and they felt that this location would meet that determination. You saw all the results from the Fitch report. And then recently, the International Association of Firefighters completed their study, and they concurred as well that a location as this in the center of town gives the best response time within the parameters, adequate response time as we measure it nationwide. That's not to say as the city grows in different directions, those needs could change many years down the road. It's quite possible. Depends on how the city grows. In what direction? Do we grow to the east? Do we grow to the west? How does it all lay out? So these things are part of something that has not been done in the past. I think mostly as a result of failure of administration and not the fire and EMS department. They're busy just trying to make it work. But strategically, this should have been done, decades ago in analyzing how the city is growing. What does it mean? So when we brought in Auburn Knolls, when we brought in Monticello and all this development, that's on the south side of town, the south and east side of town, far away from the town center. There should have been studies and stuff to look at. How will this affect our response time? Will we be able to get there and be within the percentile response that we need to be? That's the kind of stuff that needs to go on an ongoing basis as we grow to the north with the Meyer development and maybe further points north, or as we're looking out on east on Market Avenue with the development that Altman Brothers may intend to bring, or what we may do out on the west side with the highway development and the shared services agreement with Jackson. We're going to need to know how this affects our ability of our folks to deliver services.
Now, the current fire station on Main, we plan on selling that or redeveloping?
Well, it's funny that you should ask that, because it seemed that there is an entity that owns most of the land around it that would love to acquire this property from the city so that they could complete a city block. Ben, are you able to reline that a little bit? So here's the fire station right here.
Uh-huh.
This parking lot that's behind the fire station that is owned by this church right here, and they've graciously, I might add graciously, have allowed us to park there for a decade on that parcel. This little parcel behind is owned by IRG. And this big parcel here is owned by IRG. So there has been talks that we've initiated through the mayor of trying to get IRG to switch this parcel here to IRG, but behind the church, IRG has a parcel. So the church would like that parcel. It would make sense that this church, if you can slide it up just a little bit, it would make sense that this could be one whole block owned by the church. That's what and they could deal with parking and put more parking in here for their constituency. And then it would make sense over time that if you slide back down, if you don't mind, that this one could be an entire city block owned by IRG that they could develop. Now, that's not to say that we are precluded from doing the development ourselves and trying to think those things out. We're putting out an RFP, at least throughout, Northeast Ohio. We're interested in ideas on how you could reconfigure the space. Could it be a restaurant? Not much of one because there'd be no parking for it. Find the space here, but so that way it makes more sense if it was there, and I think that they'd be interested in buying that, and that would help offset the cost of building.
And then what about on 7th Street? For our-
7th Street, as you know, I don't know if you can go there then. So right here, this used to be a park garage when it was first constructed in 1971.
56.
And then later it was converted into this EMS station. And then subsequently we added, this on as sleeping and living quarters to that as the EMS department grew. And I will just do a parenthetically aside, this was done through the design bid build process. And Bill, it was terrible. I remember walking into it the first time and looking and saying, okay, wait a minute here. I feel like I'm in one of those carnival places where you walk in and the walls just don't seem right. I'm like, the room seems like the floor is sloping away. The floor should be level. And I'm like, drop a ball and see what happens to it. Total, chaos and litigation over the low bidder who didn't who didn't build it to the architect's design standard before my time, and there was no supervision over it, and it's not ideal. So we don't like the designs that build that, and we're glad that the architects like the other side. Well, but anyway, so what would we do with this is, there's several options available, but I think the one that seems to be the one most prevalent is to turn it into, a Dogwood East, Dogwood West, the pavilion. This thing is rented both sides practically, 24/7, 365. It is a hot commodity, but it is very limited. If we were able to open this up and do stuff with that here, we think that we could, turn that into an income-producing property. That would be one possibility. And we know that there's plenty of development going on with the schools out here and what's happening. So, there's
Not gonna happen.
I think a need for something like that out close to where the schools are.
Significant amount of work has gone into this project so far. I just think it's important that as we go down this path, the benefits of the new EMS fire station, the full-time staff, the reduction in overtime, the reduction in actual equipment that we're going to need. Some of that equipment's $1 million plus and 3 or 4 years out to build. I think City Council's on this side saying, here's the direction that we think the city should be 4, 5, 10 years from now. So that's where we're at. Any other comments, Patrick?
I would just add to that, Dave. It isn't often talked about. It should have been talked about decades ago. Just there was no strategic planning in the administration, so you just have to call a spade a spade. But in that respect, by having 2 separate facilities, you have to staff each location with appropriately licensed, trained, certified personnel to be able to jump into whatever vehicle needs to be there. Well, it doesn't make sense to have at the Main Street location all fire engines, and then at the 7th Street location just all ambulances. And then the ambulances are out, a couple of them are out, and they've run out of people. Well, how are you going to get the personnel from Station 1 up to Station 2 to jump into another ambulance? So it's been a matter of putting ambulance fire trucks at this location, ambulance fire trucks at that location. and then having enough trained personnel to be able to jump out, 1, 2, 3 calls. And when you run out of personnel at one location, you have to do callbacks, get everybody who's part-time or otherwise come back in. We need manpower. We're at one location, then everybody's there. The likelihood of running out of appropriate personnel, as Ben has done with his data analysis, is very remote. Very rare chance of happening. So what does that mean? It means that if we have enough full-time personnel, that will save us on the overtime, it'll save us on the callbacks, and it'll give us a full-time department. And, you look at all that's being done in the community, and you have to ask yourself, why don't we have we're talking about the school has made, tens of millions of dollars of investment in the community with new buildings, with building another one. All the tens of millions that are going on up at Meyer. We're at some point here in the next few weeks, we'll be talking about the West Factory project and all that. And there's tens of millions of dollars of infrastructure, new projects that are happening, but we don't want to commit to having a full-time fire department that's going to be able to respond to that. At some point that becomes, I think it's well beyond that point, having one location, we solve the personnel issue, and that's a big issue. Everybody's fighting for the same personnel. They get great offers from different communities, and we're all basically poaching off of one another. There's not enough people going through the academies to kind of take their place, not just fire. So that solves the staffing thing, and then there's the equipment side. Again, because we have two locations, we have, then how many fire apparatus trucks do we have?
6, 6.5 if you want to count the gator.
6.5 if you count the gator. And we believe that going down to one location, we can eliminate having to have those couple extra trucks, because they're all available and anybody can jump in them at that location. And beyond a major event, we would rely upon mutual aid to exercise the mutual aid agreement. That's another thing. So you consider the chiefs and the positions that they've been in. A mutual aid agreement means that you will respond in the event that you are contractually obligated under certain circumstances to respond. How can you enter into an agreement when your team isn't relying upon part-time? We haven't entered into any written mutual aid agreement. Well, we would like to, but our counterparts need to know that we're going to come and be there. So that's another step of this process of becoming full-time, and it helps us with that. And that's going to be a big thing when we get down the road and we start talking about, what will probably be, a $4 or $5 million ladder truck. Is there a better way to approach this? I was on the city council when we bought that ladder truck, a $2 million truck 20 years ago. So when this thing reaches its life expectancy, what do we want to do? How are we going to handle it? And there's lots of creative ways to go in the direction that Ms. Warren would like us to go. Certain things, regionalize the approach, talk to our neighbors. How can we all collaborate in order to save some costs for everybody, not just us? We think it's a win-win. It's very important that that we move forward in this fashion as we're thinking about the next 50 years. And that's the purpose of this building. Is it's not designed to be something that lasts 10 or 15 years. It's something to be 50 years and beyond, just as our buildings now are 50 years old.
Okay. Any other questions?
At some point, after if we are moving forward with a resolution of support on this, I think that's what is that what we're doing then?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, Ms. Alaback is going to bring back, we're going to have to appropriate money. We did appropriate, or we did have professional design services, my recollection, for this project for 2023. It was like $100,000.
that we didn't spend.
that we did not spend.
Right, so that was reduced last year, we would need to add some money back this year to fund.
And again, this is over the life of this contract. It's not just the design of it, it's the actual, then the administrative contract overseeing the project to make sure that the construction manager and everything is built according to the architect standards from the beginning of the project all the way to, we're doing a ribbon cutting, closing the project down. So that is roughly, 4 years.
Right. I'll make a motion, we move the resolution to the council agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to utilities. Rubbish.
Yeah, I appreciate your saving the best for last. This is exciting. We're talking about adding some new water customers. Patrick, do you want to take this
We
one?
are talking about that. We should, I will not cease to applaud City Council on the changes that we've made over the last 2 years to how we handle our water business, and that we're trying to, adopt, practice in the private sector, called growth of our business. And growth means more customers, and more customers means that the costs for running this operation are spread out among more entities. So the more customers we can sign up, the better. So since you've made your changes to the ordinances that we put before you, we've added 31 new water customers, and that's more than that has occurred in the last 12 months and since I've been the administrator. That's a lot. And they keep coming in. So in this particular one, we're talking about an area in Lake Township, kind of if you head up Market Avenue, going, you eventually get there, called the Kennedy Estates Subdivision, large farm tract, and the owner of it is subdividing it and building there. And they would like to have our water. We would like them not to have our competitors' water. So in this particular subdivision, our engineer would prefer that we establish a 12-inch water line to service this area. Because what we're thinking of is beyond Kennedy Estates, growth beyond this. To do Kennedy Estates, we really only need an 8-inch. Do it. But if we want to tackle the growth, it doesn't make sense to put in an 8-inch and then come back years later when the growth occurs and we have to dig it up and pour in a 12-inch line. So what we did is we worked out an arrangement with the owner that we would pick up the difference in cost from the 8-inch to the 12-inch line. That's it. You're still putting it all in and getting it to all the places that you want to build, as would happen under any other subdivision. But what we're saying is, okay, I understand you don't want to put in a 12, and I don't want them to then look to competitor and say, well, I'll just go this way. So how about we'll absorb that small cost of the project. That's all we would be picking up. And this project is look to begin here when the weather breaks. So we would like to get all this handled now.
You see this addition of new customers helping us to get that water fund to the level that it needs to be, Gina?
These would be outside water customers. So
And of the 31, I think 29 of the 31 were outside, 2 inside. Unbelievable. Well, and then, as you know, we put the collaborative agreement together with Plank Township. Neighbors, they were looking to do the Orion Road project. They were granted their award, so we're going to participate in that. We are going to put in a new water line from Berkey and Eastwind, intersect Orion, travel west, almost to the Winterberry Green allotment. You know how the road kind of does a little S, right before you get to the S, we would stop. And we'd be picking up about 11 more new outside water customers. Good things for communities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is exciting and great to bring more revenue in for our water department. So with that, I would move that we add this to the agenda. Unless there's any more discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.